Welcome, brothers and sisters. My name is Eros and I am the Soul Maker. Also, welcome to the last episode in which we will talk about the elements. Today, we will try to gain a better understanding of the elements of spirit. Now, we will not follow our usual pattern, our usual scheme, because spirit is the element that permeates everything. So we will try to get a better understanding of the elements of spirit through the study of his four main movements. The first movement of elemental spirit is a uniting movement, pushing things together. For example, making all the other elements work in the equilibrium into the pentagram. But you may even want to study this element, to try to understand this element as the nuclear force holding protons and neutrons together in a nucleus. So allowing physical existence, our physical existence, but the physical existence of everything that is physical, everything that is formed of atoms. It allows us to not simply be dispersed into the void that the universe will be without anything holding things together. The second movement of elemental spirit is a dividing movement. So it allows us to maintain our separate identities, what we are and what someone else is, or something else is. So the elemental spirit allows us for our experience of the physical reality. It will be completely impossible without distinctions. This, in this sense, is a dividing element. It allows ourselves to see ourselves separated from something or someone else. In this sense, you may want to, with the same analogy, see the element of spirit as the atomic force making electron spin around the nucleus and exchange. Because of course we are connected, we are separated, everything is separated, but at the same time is connected. So just like atoms, we are exchanging, in this sense, electrons. Is a chemical, even nuclear exchange and connection. So it's a dividing element. It keeps things separated. And this is necessary because, of course, we do not want to immediately merge all together again into the eternal light. Then let's talk about the third movement. Spirit is a descending movement. In this sense, if you want, through the path of the flaming sword, if you want to talk in a Kabbalistic sense. So, what it means is the element that descends, that allows the descent from higher realities to our physical reality. Is the connection to the highest point of the tree of life. So it allows physicality. So it's the element that is extremely necessary for our souls to evolve in this plane of existence, because it descends from the higher planes. So, in this way, in this physical reality, through the element of spirit, through the action of the elements of spirit, we are allowed to learn and evolve through trial and error. So, in this sense, this element is penetrating reality, but at the same time is allowing us to move forward. The last main movement of elemental spirit is an ascending movement. So it connects us to higher realities. In this sense, in a Kabbalistic way, you may say that is what allows the path of the serpent or the path of the snake, depending on how you want to call it. So reconnecting us in our physical reality to the higher realities, ascending. So it allows our souls for ascension. It allows us to become something else. And also our souls to connect to other planes and dimensions, connecting back to the source, the one I call the eternal light, but you may call it the universe, or you may call her God. If spirit is the element that allows us to connect back to that source, back to the higher dimension for a clear guidance or for illumination, even through intuition. Then, of course, spirit in higher dimensions defines spheres, what we call spirits, but it also builds bridges for us to walk, to connect with those spirits, with those teachers. So, what is the element of spirit talking us about? It talks us about understanding deep universal meaning. What do I mean? I mean that we are obviously here for a reason. We have decided to make an experience. When we incarnated in this reality, we have decided to make an experience. We are clearly fragments of the eternal light, or the universe, or the source, or God, trying to evolve and expand into this reality through the experience of reality. So, this element is fundamental to allow our existence, but also our transformation in our evolution to return to the eternal light, to return to the universe or God, however you want to call her, or him, of course. So, we are in deep need to understand this element, to understand why we are moving here and how we should move in this reality. We are fragments of the light of the universe, trying to reproduce, trying to evolve itself. I hope this was clear. Then I know that many of you are fighters, so we will again make a fighting correspondence, a fighting analogy, if we were to put ourselves into the equilibrium of the elements, into the pentagram, we could clearly understand that spirit will be positioned in the breath. That, of course, is not visible, but it is extremely important. So, this analogy reminds us we need to breathe in the first place before a fight, and during a fight, and of course also after. So we see the circular motion of the element of spirit in this sense. And we can also see through the example of breath that this element is in the same time active and passive. So, in this analogy, taking a look at the pentagram, if spirit is the breath, air will be the mind, fire will be the passion, the desire, water will be the emotion, why we fight in the first place, and earth will be our resistance and our necessity to be grounded, as we've learned before. Breath is the reason why we have all the others, but also is the reason why all the other elements are distinct, but also is the reason why all the elements work together. I hope you can catch this example. So, I've made a lot of these examples about fighting because there are a lot of analogies between fighting and magic. For example, we just said that to fight we need breath, air, the mind, fire, passion, water, emotion, earth, being grounded, being resistant. Those are the same characteristics we need in our magical practice. We need to be stoic. We need to put in our emotion. We need to reason with our mind. And of course, we need to pour our passion, our desire into what we do. Let's make a different example. Let's try to see spirit from a different point of view. Forgive me. Now, in a survivalistic example, we may say, following again the laws of 3 into survivals, that spirit represents 3 seconds without hope. What do I mean? 3 seconds will be the time that you will need without hope to load a gun and hand yourself. So, in this sense, since spirit is the element that allows us and everything else to exist physically, in this sense it represents our deep need to exist, our necessity to exist, and our survival spirit itself. Then, let's go to straight correspondences. This time it will be harder, because elemental spirit is a little bit deceitful in this case. Let's start with the color. We do not really have a color for elemental spirit, At least not a color that we can see with our eyes. So you may say that the colors related to the element of spirit are those that we perceive when we read an aura, or any color, or none. All of these three responses are correct. Talking about timing, spirit does not really have a season, and it doesn't really have a timing during the day, because spirit is best represented in the cycle of the season, in the year cycle. So in the cycle of the years, in the wheel of the years. Direction. For spirit, we do not really have a cardinal direction. Spirit is best represented into the center of the circle. So it's usually represented as a point in the exact center of the circle. You can clearly see it in the symbol of the sun. As a guardian tower, spirit do not have a guardian tower, but we can identify the element of spirit into some, not even archangels. It will be a lie, forgive me. I was trying to oversimplify. We may find correspondences as a tower for spirit into higher hierarchies in Metatron or Adonai, in the exact same way that we find, for example, in the Goetia, the 9 kings, but then we analyze the hierarchy and we see that, for example, Shaitan exists, Leviathan exists, Lucifer exists. Then, talking about the cards, we see that the spirit does not really have a suit. Spirit is best represented in the tarots in the holy numerology that rules over the tarots. For example, the major arcanas going from 0 to 21, or the structure of the pillars that allows for 4 suites to exist, the 4 columns, for 4 chords to exist, each one with 4 different charges, titles. Then, talking about the metal related to spirit, unfortunately, we do not have any living metal, so we can't really physically represent it. Or do we? Because spirit is best represented in an alchemical way at the end of the process. So it's best represented into the philosopher's stone. So our best representation into metals and in alchemy of the elements of spirit will be the magician or the sorcerer or the witch, however you want to call her. We've seen alchemy. In alchemy, in this sense, spirit is positioned at the end of the great work. I hope this was clear. As a physical state, as we've seen before, for example, earth was solid, water was liquid. In this sense, spirit is living. So, is best represented in every living thing. Vegetables, animals, and so on. For the spirits that best represent the elemental spirit, of course, we find every spirit. Every spirit, in a sense, represents the element of spirit. Even if, in my personal opinion, so take it and put it aside, higher hierarchies have a more dense and more intense representation of the element of spirit. For the physical elements that are best representative of spirits, you may say any animal represents spirit. They are all living things. Or you may want to say that the more spiritually evolved animals best represent spirit. And in this way, we may say that despite our terrible actions towards our planet, the animal best representative of spirits will be humans. Then the magical weapon related to the element of spirit will be the lantern, and the magical operation best representative of spirit, and also in which we more often call upon spirit, will be the rituals. Because again, in most of the rituals, we see the magician, the witch, however you want to call a practitioner of the magical art, putting herself or himself into the center of the circle, representing spirit. Then, in this case, we got no specific correspondences for herbs or crystals. Because spirit is an element that permeates everything. So, in this sense, if you want to do so, you could work with anything that is living, anything that has lived, any dried herb, for example. But my personal recommendation is to use sacred geometry in sigil to better represent spirit in your operation, if you need to do so. From a zodiacal perspective, the element of spirit will be best represented in the sign of the Ophiuchus, or as I like to call him, the Serpentarium. So the 13th sign of the zodiac. But of course, in this sense, you will need to follow a 13 sign zodiacal perspective. Even I will have a changed sign and fall into the sign of the Ophiuchus in this sense. So, but even if you don't, the Serpentarium represents the end and the beginning of the cycle of the zodiac. And this is where we find the correspondence with the elemental spirits. Then, I know this has been extremely complex. Take your time, ask your questions. I always try to be available through messages, direct messages. I try to respond to all of the comments. I hope I will see you in the next series, which will be about the planets. We will try to get an in-depth look about the planets, just like we did with the elements. Also, as always, I deeply thank you for your kind attention. I honor you if you got until this point in this series especially, and may eternal light always shine upon you.